Hello, welcome to Truth in the Buff. I'm Trevor Schmidt, vocational photographer, student of Buff Parry, and chief administrator of this channel. Buff Parry is a well-known codebreaker, poet, Leonardo da Vinci expert, university instructor, and guest lecturer. He has spoken at Edmonton's Masonic Hall, Lakehead University, the University of Alberta, the National Library of Canada, Chelsea Art Museum and Gallery in New York City, with presentations around the world including the University of Bahrain and the Leonardo da Vinci Museum in Vinci, Italy. As I began to photograph and film Buff's public presentations a few years ago, it became obvious to me that his work needed a venue to reach a greater number of his critics, colleagues, and the general public. A space with which he could correct the misconceptions of his work and achievements, as well as to offer his solutions and breakthroughs that crack well-known codes, contribute to solving mysteries, and provide a new paradigm or two in all manner of human endeavor. And here we are. These are the first of what we hope to be many episodes on this channel. As we move forward, I'll be working to improve our presentations, and I'm very excited to help Buff share his studies and life works with you. Buff has gained recognition around the world as a successful code cracker of puzzles long thought to be undecipherable. Our first 3 episodes will introduce his contributions and works on the topics surrounding the Oak Island mysteries. In future episodes, we will also be addressing bona fide but enigmatic artifacts found in North America, as well as the emergence of the octagon in human culture, its unique meanings and functions, along with some dramatic breakthroughs and inventions. Be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay up to date with Buff's works and releases. We now join Buff with his guests, Dr. Geoff Pritchard and Louis Cardinal, in our first episode of Truth in the Buff.
One of a new YouTube channel, and we're going to produce episode 1 and 2 on the subject of Oak Island and its recent new information that's come out in the 2 different seasons of the Oak Island series this year. But I personally have a very long history with Oak Island that goes back to the early part of the last decade, around 2003, 2004. Actually, before that, and while I'm not going to be reading a lot during these episodes, I would like to go over the chronology that I do have in notation here, just to stay on line, because I'm known to often go off the line. Okay, this is a personal history of my involvement in the Oak Island mysteries. In 1989, I read Michael Bradley's Oak Island book titled The Secret History of Canadian Discovery and Exploration, and then I met him shortly after that. That again is 1989. In 2004, November 21st, Nick Fielding published a full-page feature article on my work in the London Times. It was the Sunday edition, page 5 of section 1, in which Fielding links my decipherment of a famous code carved into the popular Shepherd's Monument at Litchfield Estate at Chuggerell Hall to the Oak Island Mysteries. And it turns out that Louis Cardinal, my friend, who I should introduce actually, has been party to this involvement I've had since 2004 and 2005, when it was discovered by at that time the people who were conducting the research and investigation into Oak Island, that I had come up with a solution that the London Times had done a full-page feature article on by Nick Fielding. So Louis, if I can ask you to describe what happened, including finding me the newspaper, I'd much appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I remember when you made your trip to Chuggerell Hall and you were doing your work and your deciphering there. That the London Times had done a story, and we were trying to get something online and that sort of thing, but we couldn't find a hard copy, so I went over to Mike's Cigar, and I went there, and I got the very last copy of the Sunday Times, and was able to get it and bring it back. But it was really quite it was a huge, central spread on your decipherment and its connection to Oak Island. So that's how we that's how I got introduced to that whole complex of the Oak Island mystery.
And that was in December of 2004.
That's right, yeah.
And in and out of the time when Gareth, what's his?
Hampshire?
Hampshire, yeah, Gareth Hampshire, who was a reporter for CBC and BBC, had called me in to interview me about the decipherment of the encryption on the Shepherd's Monument.
That's right.
At Litchfield Estate.
And it was through that connection then that another CBC producer had connected with you to ask you to go down to Calgary to meet with the engineer and the other person, Les McPhee and
John Wanacott.
Yeah, and then we went down to Calgary and spent pretty much most of the day in conversations, and I was honored to sit at the table with you and listen to all the technical stuff that was going on, historical stuff, so it was really quite exciting and quite revealing as well.
Yeah, Lewis is referring to the beginning of a documentary by CBC. It was Sarah Kapoor as the lead journalist, and then the video journalist, I can't remember his name right now, but he was there as well, and I've had ongoing communication with him since then. And that date was March 18, 2005, when I received communication from CBC and from the team that was investigating at the time. And by the way, this team that was investigating the mysteries of Oak Island is a team also involved with something called freeze rings that are used in northern Alberta to mine diamonds now. And so they were thinking that if everything went right, there would be enough financing that could pay for this incredibly expensive engineering initiative, which would be to freeze the area around the money pit on Oak Island to then be able to get down to its bottom without tripping the
flood tunnels.
Exactly.
Yes, absolutely.
Exactly. So, okay, that was in March 18, 2005, and then May 29th, 2005, the Oak Island Treasure Forum published my involvement with the CBC documentary. Now, this year, March, April, Oak Island Treasure Forum, now in the past, we have the King of Bahrain's brother-in-law and cousin, Sheikh Duwaj Al Khalifa, arranging a special presentation that I made to him of a section of the Oak Island cofferdam that dates back centuries, and this section, this little piece of it, had been sawed off by the earlier team of Les McPhee, John Wanacott, David Tobias, and others. There's a new team, but they do consult with members of the last team. The new team that's presently producing that series. It's on History Channel. And so I was invited by Sheikh Khalifa to Bahrain for other reasons, and word got to this team that I was going there, and so the Sheikh arranged this special presentation that I was able to make once the team gave me this section of the cofferdam. So right now the brother-in-law, the King of Bahrain, is in possession of an artifact from Oak Island that reflects and represents the history of the previous attempts to get down to the bottom of it to see, what is there? Is there really, $300 million worth of gold? What's going on here? We know from anyone, and anyone else would know this, who's watched this current series on History Channel, that there definitely was a use of this pit by layers of different people through human history. That it's not all just one group that created the money pit. It's a number of people over time and in different centuries that added to and put things in and took things out. At least that's my opinion. Okay, then on the 9th of this month, Rick Lagina, who's one of the two brothers who purchased the tourism company that owns Oak Island, phoned me, and he was requesting details about my solution, the same reference made in the London Times so many years before. And so here it is, Rick, Lagina. You're going to hear the solution. Then December 23rd, the same Sheikh Dwayj Al Khalifa from Bahrain with his financial advisor Ara expressed interest in participating in a 3-artifact project that I've initiated. And we'll get to that also in a moment. What I failed to do in my opening introduction was to indicate what exactly it is that these two episodes are going to be addressing. The first one is the so-called solution that the London Times claimed I had come up with, and we'll elaborate on that extensively shortly. And the second is the complete lack of involvement from the Indigenous community in all of the Oak Island Money Pit studies, but for one episode that I've seen so far at least, and that has to do with this octagonal petroglyph that's carved on an island close to Oak Island, and it was presented in the Curse of Oak Island series that's running now. It was presented as the most cherished Mi'kmaq symbol and oldest symbol that the Mi'kmaq have used. Well, I had to do my own investigation on that. I've worked with Mi'kmaq before, and it turns out that that was accurate. That it is the most important symbol, this octagon that's carved on this stone that's on a neighboring island. The interpretation they assigned to it had to do with the octagon being associated with the Middle East and with the Temple of Solomon and with Nebuchadnezzar coming and destroying the temple. Well, that needs some elaboration. The fact is that the Mi'kmaq are part of the Algonquian family of nations and languages, and in the East there was something called the Wabanaki Confederacy that involved Mi'kmaq and several others, and shortly Rodney McLeod will come up and join us, and we'll discuss this at greater length, because we have found the octagon use running throughout the Algonquian Confederacy, but also into the Nez Perce Penutian family in a very special way that we will also return to. So the 3 artifacts I was just mentioning that we want to take on tour, and that the Sheikh of Bahrain has shown a great deal of interest in, are associated with this octagon tradition. The 3 artifacts are anomalies and enigmas in North America. One was found in the medicine bag of Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce Nation, who's considered the Gandhi kind of all of the indigenous leaders throughout North American history. And he had in his medicine bag a small clay tablet that has a cuneiform inscription. And so with that was also a pouch or a beaded bag that has this interesting octagon beaded into it that resembles very closely the octagon petroglyph that was shown in one of the episodes of the Curse of Oak Island. But we'll flesh all that out a whole lot more in a moment. I want to do some general overviews here. One of the theories about Oak Island Money Pit is that the Ark of the Covenant is there. And people laugh their heads off at this. Everybody thinks the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia, or it's still in some underground cyst beneath, Al-Aqsa Mosque in Dome of the Rock, where Solomon had lowered it at some particular time. There are all kinds of different, oral traditions and so on about where the Ark of the Covenant may be. Well, this is another one of those traditions, that it could be at the bottom of the money pit on Oak Island. The story to that is interesting, although I think people who have really jumped into this rationally and with serious intent to find, the truth, tend to discount that as an option or a likelihood. I'm neutral on it. The fact that Nebuchadnezzar, was responsible for destroying Solomon's temple in 587 BC is important in this theory about the Ark of the Covenant, because it's at that point that the Ark vanishes. No one knows where it ends up. So we know that Nebuchadnezzar had access to Phoenician ships. I mean, there's a reasonable construct that could explain how the Ark of the Covenant could have gotten to Oak Island, given that Nebuchadnezzar invaded and conquered Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, seized the ships that were being used out of what's today called Lebanon, and also the coast of what's today called Israel, and that whole eastern Mediterranean region. The Phoenicians were still flourishing. They had Carthage as an outpost. They were the mercantile empire of the world at the time. And so if anybody had ships that could have actually brought the Ark of the Covenant over to this continent, it would have been the Phoenicians. And because Nebuchadnezzar had also partially conquered the Phoenicians, he had access to their ships. So there's a way to explain, in a reasonable way, how this could have happened. Now the issue is Nebuchadnezzar, was associated with cuneiform writing because he was Babylonian, and the Babylonians used cuneiform. So that we have found 3 different artifacts in North America bearing cuneiform inscriptions, one of which has been vetted completely in terms of its authenticity, which is the the clay-baked tablet of Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce, without any question of its authenticity, because when the U.S. Army took it from him, it was in 1877 on the border between what's today Alberta and Montana, and the cuneiform system hadn't been completely deciphered. It hadn't been completely cracked as a system of writing. Most of it had been by about 1850. But 1877 there were remaining elements to the cuneiform system that were not understood. And some of those are on the small clay-baked tablet of Chief Joseph. So, there's no way this can be a hoax to invent something to pawn it off as authentic before the whole writing system that's on that tablet had been completely deciphered. So, that alone to me is enough evidence to tell me that this is an authentic artifact from the Middle East, from Babylonia, from the Arabo-Persian Gulf, from somewhere in the general area where the Akkadians, the Phoenicians, the Sumerians, the earlier Dilmun Empire, and Babylonian, Mesopotamian, all of those peoples, lived and used this cuneiform system of writing. So we have his tablet it reposed at West Point Military Academy in New York. There's a similar artifact bearing the same date, which is 2042 BC, but it's carved into, the cuneiform is carved into lead. So it's a lead tablet that hasn't been completely vetted yet. I think anyone would be hard pressed to prove that it's a hoax simply because of what it states and the way that it was discovered, and that the information in it that is detailed in the cuneiform script is about an event that happened back in Sumer, Babylonia, with a young lady entering a priesthood, and that became a special holiday. And so the year is given by name, the month is given by name, and the day is given by name on both artifacts, on both Chief Joseph's artifact and on the lead tablet. The lead tablet is owned by LaGrange College in Georgia. So that's another of the three that we want to investigate and that we want to put on tour into the Gulf, in a sense bring it back to where it had come from. There's no knowledge that is certain about how it got here, where it came from, and who brought it. All that's known is that these three artifacts were found here. The third one was found on Shawnee Creek in Oklahoma, and it is an ironstone, a chunk of ironstone, and it has a depiction of the goddess Inanna, who forms in a very early period. Venus is on the other end of that continuum, and it has carved on it something called Dillman script. And Dillman script was just fairly recently deciphered by Ali Akbar Bushiri, who is a scholar from Bahrain, and he has identified the information that's carved on that stone. He did that back in the 1980s. So we have three very interesting artifacts that have been found in North America, in Georgia, on the border of Alberta and Montana, and in Oklahoma, that have two scripts that come out of the Middle East, that come out of the Arabo-Persian Gulf area and Babylon, Mesopotamia generally. Here, likely authentic, certainly one of them 100% authentic. The other two, I think, are virtually authentic. It's going to take a little more work for me to be completely assured of that. But we know that Chief Joseph's is authentic, and we know that it bears a date that is identical to the date on the lead tablet that was found in Georgia. And then this very odd ironstone with the image of Inanna in the octagon, getting back to, again, the octagon, makes it a trio that I think would be a fantastic exhibit that could be put on tour. But it brings us to that series again called The Curse of Oak Island, and to that octagonal symbol that was shown, given that these three artifacts have a direct linkage to the octagon, and to the type of script that was being used at the time that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Solomon's temple. So there is a convergence of data and of interesting points that are, I think, absolutely begging for more investigation and research. Three artifacts that bear writing forms that come out of the Middle East, and specifically the Mesopotamian area, Babylon, and the Arabo-Persian Gulf. The dates of the discovery of these three in North America are 1877 for Chief Joseph's stone, his clay tablet, 1989 for the ironstone. Is it, Rodney? It's 1989, isn't it?
Yeah, the 1960s, the other one.
Yeah, 1960s. The lead tablet that was found in Georgia by a woman named Mrs. Jo Hearn, who was preparing a garden, a vegetable garden, and as she was doing it, this thing popped up. I don't know if it was her hoe or shovel or what instrument or implement she was using that dug it up, but anyway, she found it, and then she carried it around and asked several questions of experts on it. She got the inscription translated by a professional Assyrian scholar, and that's how we know it bears the same message essentially as the one that's on the Chief Joseph tablet, but also that particular not ironstone, but lead tablet ended up as the possession of LaGrange College. So we already have a kind of a tentative agreement with the president of Lagrange College to take this on tour with the other two artifacts. Now, on the same subject of writing systems and Indigenous writing, and what's been speculated about concerning Oak Island and this very bizarre stone artifact that was found 90 feet down on a platform inside of the money pit. There's an Indigenous Cree scholar who is part of that same family, Algonquian family, that the Mi'kmaq are part of, and he studied the inscription on the stone. I'll give you his name here in just a moment. His last name is Ranville, Keith Ranville. He identifies himself as a First Nations researcher, and he did an analysis of the stone and its inscriptions, not the three that I've just mentioned, but the one that was found in the money pit 90 feet down, and found that there are some symbols that match up with the Cree syllabic system of symbols. And this is very important because, you know, he's the only voice coming from the Indigenous community, in addition to Lewis, and Lewis was part of the CBC documentary. He spoke a little bit at the round table and so on, but there's just been a real, I think, rude negligence in appreciating the role of Indigenous people in all of this. Issues which we'll get into in a moment, but just to throw out a bit of a tantalizer, the Wabanaki Confederacy is a confederacy that the Mi'kmaq, who were the only First Nation of Nova Scotia virtually, with visitors coming and going, like Passamaquoddy and Maliseet and Abenaki and so on. But all of those I just mentioned are part of the Wabanaki Confederacy. They were always allied with the French, and therefore with the Catholics. The Iroquoian Confederacy was always allied with the English, and therefore, and I say this cautiously, and therefore with the Protestants, because there were problems back in the old country between the Church of England and the Presbyterians, for example, and so on. So it wasn't like all Protestants were on one side and all Catholics were on the other during this period of a few centuries that we will get into in a moment.
Well, if you don't mind me saying to that, I think it's an important point that you bring up, is that, there's this idea of terra nullius, which is empty land. And of course, this story of Oak Island has been missing that connection with Indigenous people, which is really important, because they wouldn't be able to have been there for very long without having a connection with the Indigenous people of the area, the Wabanaki Confederacy, the Maliseet, and so forth and so on. And I think that's an important point, because then where is the Indigenous voice and the memory that is talking about those relationships? They certainly do exist, but it's not in the current form of the story of Oak Island.
That's right, Liz. What we end up with is the idea that, the great Gluskap, yes, who is the Mi'kmaq's Wasakishak, or Napi to the Blackfoot, or Nanabiju to the Ojibwe and so on, that Gluskap was actually modeled in image on Prince Henry Sinclair, who is said to have taken a voyage over to North America from Scotland in the late 1300s, early 1400s period. He's responsible, his family members are at least, for building Rosslyn Chapel south of Edinburgh. And so why the immediate resort to someone who may well have come here, a Latter-day Knights Templar, Prince Henry Sinclair? He may have come to North America, but why associate automatically the prophet figure, very sacred person in Mi'kmaq tradition, with Prince Henry Sinclair? And there's so little reason to make that linkage and comparison. And this goes to the whole issue of paradigms that are, for whatever reason, so resilient to new evidence, to changing views of things like the origin of Cree syllabics. That if I can get Geoff Pritchard, who's here, Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Wolfong Pritchard, to speak just for a bit on his role in helping to discover the origin of Cree syllabics. The point to this is these paradigms are damaging to Indigenous, to the awareness of Indigenous history and knowledge, and to identity. Always invoking others as the source of any great accomplishment, and never finding in the community itself the source of genius, the source of of creative ability and cultural contributions. And these paradigms have to be dealt with. They're still teaching this nonsense in many Indigenous faculties across the continent. I'll put it that way safely. Everybody's really cautious. They don't want to finally give in and say, well, yeah, the evidence is in on the Cree syllabics. So when this gentleman, Keith Ranville, even if he's wrong, when he makes comparisons between the Cree syllabic symbols and symbols found on a stone inside of the money pit on Oak Island, he should be paid attention to. He and many others who have so much more to contribute. In the oral traditions, and it is from those that people have made the comparison with Glooskap, with being Prince Henry Sinclair having come over, and of course then they're going to say that Prince Henry Sinclair brought gold, and hid it in the money pit, and it becomes an exponential delusion or illusion when so much of it is based on faulty paradigms that need to be addressed. So because Geoff Pritchard has done some really excellent work, and he'll tell you about it, I would like to open this up to Geoff sharing his experience in Cree syllabics with you, so we can all help destroy at least one of the paradigms that keeps getting in the way.